And it kind of leads us to our last segment, where it's our leadership lessons from Luke, and where we look at biblical lessons to become better leaders. And I'm going to refer to Luke 11:42 because we're, looking through Luke for the leadership lessons we can learn from Luke, because there's so many leadership lessons in there. Almost every verse has a leadership take on it, or we can interpret it anyway. But Luke 11, verse 42. Now, I'm not going to read the full passage, because the whole passage in the NIV is titled The Six Woes. And this is, Jesus is having dinner with the Pharisees and everything like that. And they're all, they're all trying to vie for position and kind of showing that, their position with Jesus, and Jesus calls them out, as he normally does with Pharisees. And in 42, now there's six woes here, and all the woes are actually kind of on the same vein, where, going back to our thing about culture, he's talking about, you guys are just focusing on the wrong culture. You have this culture of performance, right, of doing the right things. And he goes through all the six woes about them, about their poor culture. But I want to look at 42 because it kind of brings to conclusion the things that we've been speaking about today. He says, "Woe to you, Pharisees, because you give God a tenth of your mint, rue, and all other kinds of garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. You should have practiced the latter without leaving the former undone." They did all the right things. They performed, but they neglected justice or care for other people and love of God. And what is love of God? Loving people, right? He calls us to love him and then love others as we love ourselves. And so I kind of feel like, to wrap up our culture, topic, woe to you. Woe to you if you're trying to chase these accolades and try to do all the right things, but neglect justice, that care for people, that love, that all people are equal, that there isn't a hierarchy, although there is a practical, hierarchy. There is no hierarchy in importance of person, and no hierarchy in importance of purpose either. So we as leaders have to make sure that we are caring for people and not just trying to do all the right things. Dr. Rod, what's your take on the woes from Jesus?
Woe is me. That's all I can say. Yeah, look, I think that's a really significant verse, because we touched a little earlier on the whole issue of the difference between the business corporation and the church. The business corporation, largely, I guess I'm overplaying it, but largely it's all about technical relationships. You go to a board meeting in a corporate and you're looking at your balance sheet, you're looking at all the financial reports, you're looking at your marketing reports, you're looking at a strategic report and all kinds of things like that. That, in a way, is the tithing of the mint and the rue. Mm-hmm. But we in the church world, we've got to be very, very conscious that fundamentally we are disciples.
Yep.
And we're meant to be making disciples.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I sound as if I know a lot here, Craig, but just let me share something with you. I was kind of glad in a way that you didn't go on to read the next verse.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 43 of Luke chapter 11 says this: "Woe to you, Pharisees, for you love the best seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces." And I've got a confession to make here that I've never made publicly. But look, it was only a few months ago that the Lord ministered to me on this. And I would have to say I was shocked, because he said, he said to me, why are you still seeking identity in position?
Mm-hmm.
You could have floored me.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to look at my life and say, Lord, you're right. You are right. I want people to recognize me. And yet, I know in my head that this is not God's way.
Yep.
That I need to serve my vocational calling.
Mm-hmm.
I need to serve him. I need to serve others without looking to build my identity on the recognition that I receive from others.
Well, he does. The word does say, for those who seek the reward and accolades from man, he's received his reward.
No, you got him. That's it. Paid in full.
Paid in full. Done.
But I think we just have to be so aware that, we can read these passages and say, "Oh, I'm glad I'm not like the Pharisees," but actually we are.
Very much so.
And we do have to guard against it. And as I say, if you happen to have a charismatic personality, you need to doubly guard against it.
Yeah.
Because you will attract people. People will love you. People will seek to serve you. And eventually you might come to believe you are the person they think you are.
Yes. Yes. Which
and
is
then
the biggest
that can
mistake.
lead you to these excesses.
Mm-hmm.
For example, of that very heavy emphasis on performance, of growth in the church. And look, we in the Pentecostal movement, we're quite susceptible to the idea of growth.
Yep.
The reason is a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we are strongly driven by a need to see people saved.
Yeah.
And the theological reason for that is that we hold to what they call the doctrine of imminence.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any Pentecostal movement that exists today that doesn't say Jesus is coming back without warning.
Yeah.
And that's what motivates us to focus so strongly on salvation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we sometimes then neglect is discipleship, which is the point that you raised just a few minutes ago. And so we can build our whole church around, as it were, getting people saved.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want an environment that is attractive to people whose only experience is with the world. Yep. They haven't been introduced to Jesus. Yep. We get them in. We bring them to the point where they say, yes, I want to become a follower of Jesus. Then what we tend to do is get them involved as volunteers, because that engages them in the church. And that's a good thing. But then we can go on, come along and be an intern. And suddenly these people find they're vacuuming the carpet, they're cleaning the toilets, they're driving the pastors around, they're going to the airport to pick up a guest speaker, and they're not being discipled.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things we've really got to ask ourselves is, as leaders, are we disciples? Yeah. And are we discipling others? As churches, are we a church of disciples?
Yeah. Discipling
others?
Yeah.
If we're in business, as an entrepreneur, am I a disciple discipling others?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of these things, that's the difference between tithing, the mint and the rue. That's a good thing.
Yes.
Do it.
Don't neglect those.
Don't neglect these other things. So do the salvation thing.
Yeah.
Do it. It's necessary, but don't neglect the discipleship. And that would be my plea to leaders everywhere, no matter where you are, whether you're in church or a leader in the business world or in a government department or in a voluntary organisation, a charity or something like that, wherever you're exercising leadership, just be sure you get all that technical stuff right. You've got to make sure the budget balances.
Yes.
You've got to pay the bills on time. You've got to adhere to the maintenance schedule. You've got to follow all the regulations. That all matters, just as tithing the mint and rue matters. but don't neglect these other things. And in particular, don't neglect discipleship. And I know, Craig, this is your heart.
Mm-hmm.
I know you seek to disciple people, and you've surrounded yourself with people who disciple you as well. And obviously, it's my privilege to be one of those. And you and I have had some pretty hard conversations in private, and of course, that will always remain in private, because you have invited me to become one of those who disciples you.
Yeah.
And honestly, I need it. I had coffee yesterday with another pastor. He probably doesn't see himself as discipling me, but he is discipling me. I have a senior leadership within the context of the Ignite Life churches of which we're part.
Mm-hmm.
My senior pastors stayed with us for a week just recently, and they hold us accountable.
Yeah.
And that's so important. It doesn't matter that I've been around for a long time, that I'm a senior this or a senior that I've been I'm an emeritus
PhD
professor, all of those
or whatever.
things. I've got, all those letters after my name. But you know what? As far as God is concerned, I'm no different to anybody else. He loves me no more, no less than anybody else. He seeks to grow me no more, no less than anybody else. And I know that his heart for me in whatever ministry environment I happen to be in is that I be a disciple and that I disciple others.
That's great. Look, the woes, leadership lessons from Luke this week is the culture. Are you building a culture of just performance, of achievement, or are you also building a culture of caring and loving for people, build people and the business, build people and the ministry, build people. Gotta love people, gotta build people, gotta encourage people. You got to invest in the people and help disciple them. And another quick shameless plug: if you want to know how to disciple people better, or if you want to have your people be discipled through our program, we have a free faith-based leadership development program that's available for you. You've watched a quick excerpt. Well, actually, we know we talk a little bit, so it's not that quick. But you've watched an excerpt from our weekly live full episode of On the Cube Leadership Podcast. If you want to see what more you can learn to become a better leader from pop culture, from business, from politics, from ministry leadership, and from the Bible, we encourage you, hit the subscribe button and join us as we continue to share more and more information like this so that you can become a better leader that learns, lives, and leads on purpose.